Delay.
Sleepless nights, the rain or
Hey y'all, this is Austin Bishop, and you're streaming the Melodies and Memories podcast with Jillian and Aaron Schreiber.
and all I do is 'cause of daddy's wore out blues.
Welcome to the Melodies and Memories podcast with Jillian and Aaron Schreiber, brought to you by Arlo Revolution. Each week, they connect melodies and memories with fans and singer-songwriters from all genres of life. When all else in life is gone, music will be left to leave the legacy of life's adventures. Please welcome your hosts of the Melodies and Memories podcast, Jillian and Aaron Schreiber.
All right. What is up, everybody? We are excited. We have a show planned for you guys today. All right. We're going to test the audio, make sure we look good, we sound good. If you're in the chat, let us know where you're listening from. And if it sounds good on your end, I'm getting a thumbs up already. Dude, we might have to take this show on the road more often because we don't get a thumbs up that quick at home.
We're doing good. Sounds good.
Are you ready to rock and roll?
Let's go.
All right. Hello and welcome everyone to season 6 of the Melodies and Memories podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Schreiber.
And I'm your co-host, Jillian Schreiber.
Our mission tonight is to provide a platform for motivated singers, passionate fans, or someone who is making or made a difference in and around the music community. We hope everyone leaves inspired with a positive outlook and begins connecting their own melodies to memories. Tonight we are presented by our good friends at Arlo Revolution, cinematic wedding films, music videos, and promos. Find them at arlorevolution.com. And One Tree Planted. For every 1,000 downloads of the show, we plant a tree with One Tree Planted. Download the show on your favorite podcast app today. And last but not least, Pod Decks. Pod Decks are the hottest tool to get your next great interview, unique interview questions in the palm of your hand. Our two on-screen sponsors tonight is Art on a Higher Wire by Joel, original and custom artwork inspired by your life moments, treasured photos, and memories, and Shed Services. At Shed Services, we offer a full range of maintenance services depending on your needs. Find them at shedservices.com. If you're looking for ways to support or sponsor Melodies and Memories, then please head over to our Patreon page. Tiers start just $1. If Patreon is something you can't do, the next best way to support the show is to like, share, review, and subscribe. Remember, you can join us every Monday night at 7 p.m. Central on Facebook and YouTube, where you can interact with the show. And sometimes we do a little one-offs like 11 o'clock Eastern time, which we're really excited for today. So, well, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's guest. We welcome on Denny Magruder for episode 143. Since 1986, Denny has been the executive director right here at the Wes Banco Arena, the place that started it all for me. I've always looked up to my uncle as a role model. Heck, he's the inspiration behind the reason why I'm doing what I love to do today, which is working around music. He is one of the hardest working and most dedicated humans I've ever met. On his last day, we are lucky and honored to discuss the melodies and memories that make up his incredible journey. We're glad to bring my uncle on. Woo. All right. There he is, everybody. Welcome on to the show. Thank you for joining us so much. We are so excited for this.
Thank you for having me, Aaron.
So we like to start it off the same way every week with our guests. We want to know kind of like what was playing around your household, music-wise. Growing up, what were you listening to? My mom kind of told me a story that I want to bring up too, that used to go to a store and buy some 45s off a jukebox. And she's able to overhear these.
I can't say that I listened to an awful lot of music growing up because I was probably out of the house most of the time. My first love wasn't managing arenas.
No.
My first love was playing baseball. So I kind of lived at the ball fields as a teenager. But when I was home at night, I used to pop on the transistor radio and listen to the 45s at that day. And it was it's what we call doo-wop today, you know.
Yeah.
The Connie Francis, the Bobby Vinton, the Elvis Presleys, the Everly Brothers. There were so many great ones. So, that's the music I guess I listened to when I listened to it.
So before you came here, did you go to any concerts at all? We always like to ask people about their first concert experience.
Yeah, I did a few concerts. I wasn't a big concert guy. Most of the concerts I went to were actually at Ogilvy Park here in Wheeling.
Okay.
They used to do a summer concert series, and I don't remember all of them, but one of the significant ones in the day was Johnny Mathis. Was a great show. I've been to a couple concerts at Pittsburgh years ago, but most of the concerts I've seen are pretty much here, or I like to visit other theaters now just to see what's going on. So, yeah.
That was something when I used to work at a theater back home for a while. And now when I walk into places like the Capitol Theater, the Genesee Theater in Waukegan, I love seeing just these old Victorian theaters. They're just beautiful. And I know the Capitol is just another one on that list up the road here. So what finally brought you to where we sit today? We are actually doing the show live at the Wes Banco Arena, which I call it still the Wheeling Civic Center. And
A lot
it's
of
been
people
that
do.
way since, was it 1977?
It opened in April of 1977. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, so what brought you finally here in 1986, 9 years later?
Well, my route, Aaron, was a little circuitous because one of my early jobs, my background's accounting and finance, and that's where I worked. But I worked for the city of Wheeling, and I was working in finance. And when this building was a dream in the early 70s, this is the time I went to work for the city in 1972. This building was in the pimple stages, the planning stages in 1972. And I got the pleasure of working on the bond issue and hearing about the excitement. Got to meet with architects and be part of the team that built this place.
Yeah.
And so there was an early love and an early interest. At that point, the first manager, he was hired to come to Wheeling, Frank Rodriguez. Frank came here right before construction began so that he could oversee it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to know Frank and meet Frank, and he had some experience in the entertainment business. And he asked me, he said, listen, I know the entertainment business. I don't know the accounting world. So would you be willing to design an accounting system for me? And I'm proud to say that basic system is still in place today. So, I just was around the building in its infancy. I did the accounting work for Frank those first several years. And after I left the city, I went to work for an accounting firm and then moved on to, I was a comptroller, business manager of a pretty large school district. But then one day I got a call from the board, the chairman of the board, who was a guy that I knew very well, and he wanted me to take this job. And I thought he was crazy.
You told him no.
And here I am today.
Did you tell him no at first?
I did tell him no because this industry was not on my radar. I had dreamt that I was going to continue in the accounting industry. But when the opportunity came and I thought about it, and I just had such admiration for several of the board members at that time. And I guess maybe I was flattered that they were interested in me.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? This might be a chance. And it's turned into a real chance. It's something I've just loved.
So
No
in
doubt about it.
86, you're doing about 20 to 30 concerts a year. What kind of bands were you bringing in here in the 80s, in the mid 80s?
Listen, anybody, Aaron, who was anybody in classic rock in that day, the Doobie Brothers, Poison, Styx, REO, you name it, they were here. I mean, Heart, ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. I mean, the names, we were actually doing, as you just said, 20 to 28 concerts a year from actually late 1986 until 1990. And then entertainment changed in America because basically that's when the amphitheaters, they were born shortly before that, but that's when they bloomed.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a brand new amphitheater just up the road here in Pennsylvania on the border by the name of Star Lake. And that changed the touring industry. So many of those rock bands started to move that direction. So
that's where I saw my second concert. My first concert was here, but my second concert had to be Hootie and the Blowfish at Star Lake, because once my mom found out about my first concert here, she's like, yeah, no more of those for a little bit, which we'll talk about. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But so we went up to Star Lake for Hootie. I still remember that. It was a good time.
it's a great venue. Yeah.
So coming through, and we'll get into kind of 97 right now. And in 97, you had two controversial shows here. One of them was my first show I got to take a part of, but you had Marilyn Manson in February. How was kind of coming in with a tour that, I know when Kiss came here in 97, you guys had protesters out. Did you have the same for Marilyn Manson?
Well, quite honestly, Aaron, Manson was the hotly contested show because at that time, Marilyn was a national item. He was being featured on CNN and all,
Yep.
and he was a controversial figure, as you know. Most people thought he was the epitome of Satanism and some other kind of strange things, and the onstage behavior was weird. So when Manson, when the actual promoter was Belkin Productions out of Cleveland, a major promoter of the day, Belkin booked Marilyn Manson here in this building. And to be honest with you, again, it was at the height of the controversy. Look, I think you guys know a little bit about Wheeling. This is a very conservative town, a Christian conservative town. So it was really a controversial thing. And once it was announced here, Quite honestly, I got a call the first day that it went on sale. They advertised the show. I got a call about an hour after the show went on sale from some very dear friends in the media saying they were pulling the ads. They couldn't run this anymore. But here's the irony. One of the major radio networks who had planned a very aggressive ad schedule, after 2 ads, they canceled the schedule. But for the next 3 weeks until the show, they continued to talk about Marilyn Manson every hour on the news. And so Marilyn Manson sold out without incident with the smallest ad budget I think that's ever been spent.
That's what they say. Even bad press is still good press because it still puts it out there.
But the other thing, the show, while the show, it's not a show I'd send my kids to or let my nephew go to. But
no, my dad waited until a month later.
But in all honesty, they were very nice, friendly people. They were very mannerly, which led me to believe that, this is the entertainment industry. I think a lot of the shtick, the front was to sell tickets. Again, I don't believe that Marilyn and his band are satanists. I saw the thing here. Interesting for us though, we got a call the week before. CNN really, they jumped on this because here's a national news agency with the most controversial entertainer appearing in one of the most conservative towns. And so they came here and set up shop for a couple of days.
Wow.
They wanted to get the vibes from the community. They visited the schools. The show happened to be on a Saturday. So on Friday, they were out talking to a lot of the schools, getting their opinions and interviewing people on the street. And then they had arranged with us and with Marilyn's agent to do a 1-hour live interview from the dressing room here on day of show. So, the show was a Saturday evening at 4:00 on Saturday afternoon. Marilyn was live on CNN. And then on Sunday, the camera crews and the news crews stayed around and they visited some of the churches to get their feedback. And
they had to go for themselves.
There was then a 1-hour special that showed a couple different times on CNN. And I think it depicted Wheeling pretty well. Now, there were tons of demonstrators out here.
Yeah.
Because again, when controversy happens, you get demonstrations out front. They were all peaceful. It was kind of like the Christians versus the Lions at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But the show went off without a hitch. There were no problems. The show was sold out. All the players, including the arena, made money. A lot of people said to me, well, what about this? Why would you book Marilyn Manson? And here's the thing. Yet today I manage a public venue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the privilege to pick and choose who comes here.
Well, if you picked all your favorite artists, not everybody's going to want to come and see. Not everybody has your same taste.
Gotta have a variety. Yeah. Yep.
Completely inappropriate for me to decide who plays here. So, if any group, any organization, any band, any group, if what they do is legal, it's not in a violation of the law, they pay their bills, they sign a contract, they'll get to appear here. That's why we have public venues and freedom of speech and freedom of performance. So that was probably the most contested show that we've ever done. Now, you mentioned the KISS show.
Yeah.
The KISS show just happened to be shortly after the Marilyn Manson show.
Next month.
And so it was a carryover by some of the demonstrators. I don't think the demonstrators at all were really demonstrating against KISS in spite of, again, they depicted themselves to do things that were kind of inhumane and unreasonable. And I can assure you that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You were here one of those kids. I don't know if it's that night.
I'm showing the ticket stub on the screen right now. It was March 27th, 1997. That was my
97.
very first concert.
And I think it was an excellent concert. It sold out again. The band had a great time. All of the attendees had a great time. And it was a heyday of music here at the arena. And it's something we look back on and say, hey, it was a great night.
It was a very great night.
Great night.
So I don't even know if I've ever shared the entire story with you. So I've shared with my dad and a couple other people. This is my take on March 27th, 1997. I got here and we were in my uncle's office, which is not too far from where we're sitting right now. And he goes, hey, doors are getting ready to open. Anywhere you want to go,
you were
go.
15,
I was
right?
15 years old. I was 15 years old in 1997. He's like, doors are getting ready to go open. Wherever you want to go find a spot. I went front row, dead center, and sat down. And I'm sitting there on the floor. Next thing I hear, like really loud, I turn around and doors must have opened. This rush of people are just coming. I grabbed that barricade. And I think my dad told me that you told some of the security guards up front that's my nephew. If anything happens to him, it's your ass.
Well, in those days, it was the heyday of what we called festival seating. So the floor, as you know, you were
Wide
here.
open pit, yeah.
The floor's wide open. It's a pit. Eventually turned into mosh pits and other things. The one thing that we did just a little different here, though, if way back in the 80s in Cincinnati, there was a problem with the festival floor where the stage was stormed, and unfortunately several young folks died. So we learned some lessons from that. And what we tried to do was station guards and obstacles, because the habit was the doors open, everybody tries to sprint directly to the wall. So we did have some interruptions. So that some of that you heard was kind of broken up. Again, I'd have to say that our security company of the day, McKean Security, became very adept at handling those festival seat crowds. And I'm proud to tell you that I'm not going to say that we never had any treatment in our triage center, because we always had them set up. But we didn't have very many. And we had no deaths. We had none of that kind of thing. We had no serious injuries. You always have some problems with people needed to be treated. When you got 10,000 people in a crazy night where they're all just partying, some things do happen. And so that's true today in all the entertainment venues. But I can tell you that the industry has trained us very well and has prepared us. The professional association that I've been very involved in, phenomenal organization, has done exceptional training and preparation and came up with some state-of-the-art standards and procedures. And I think it helps assure that the entertainment industry remains safe.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of proud of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was, that night they kept me safe that night for sure. I remember I still have, I have a $5 bill that's covered in blood, because Gene Simmons always puts
fake blood.
the fake blood, and he flew straight above me. And I looked down, I have all this red stuff on my hand. The only thing I had was a $5 bill, and I'm wiping it all over the $5 bill, putting it back. Paul Stanley ended up spitting a guitar pick at me, which I caught. Well, there's this 21-year-old girl next to me because she was consuming all night, and it was during Beth. He came out and threw out roses. I caught a rose and gave it to her. She looks at me and she's like, "Have you ever kissed a girl before?" I said, "No." And she's like, "How about your first kiss at a Kiss concert?" I said, "Yes."
That sounded pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
It was really good that night. So, but I still remember walking back in your office. I had the fake blood in my hair. The confetti stuck to me. I think I had a little bit of a bruise from the railing. And my dad looked at me and goes, "So how was it?" I said, "What was that?"
The best night of my life.
And I'll never forget that night and just that memory, because it honestly, it gave me the love for concerts. Like, I felt the energy being that close to a band that I've actually taken now to tell you this. I don't know if you've known this yet. Jackson and Avery, our kids, their very first concerts both were Kiss.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah.
It's a family tradition. It sounds like, right?
Because of that, because of March 27, 1997, family tradition started, and we took the boys. Their first show is Kiss.
Certainly a big night. Yeah.
Now, another big night I had here, which I don't have the actual picture, but this is probably 9 or 10-year-old me that I'm showing on the screen. And I got to meet Hulk Hogan for the first time. I showed up here at the Wheeling Civic Center, standing outside of a line that looked somewhat like that. And those were lines that you had.
They were typical lines of the day. Yeah.
And that was the night I got to learn that wrestling was actually a gimmick, because we just got done watching, I think it was like Greg the Hammer Valentine, the Mountie, go after it. We're backstage, the Nasty Boys end up staring at my mom. But there's Greg the Hammer Valentine and the Mountie drinking a beer together right after their match. I was just like, now I get it. I get it.
It's entertainment.
And it is entertainment, and sometimes at its finest. WWE, they still attract large crowds. They're on sale here right now for a date on, I believe it's December 10. They've been a staple. Now, here's what I can tell you. I have met over the years. Obviously, we've done a lot of television with them. The vice president at the time, Ed Cohen, has been to my home, sat in with your cousins. And I think at first they came in, they said, "Oh, Dad, come on, this is crazy." Classy Freddie Blassie, who's a big name, sat in our living room one night for 3 hours and shared stories and emotions. And what I learned that night with my kids was that these are phenomenal human beings. They're great at what they do. I would say to you, Aaron, that over the years, you've seen them. I've watched them. They've been here many times. They're phenomenal athletes. Now, what they do, look, let's be honest, it's a performance. Sometimes it gets out of control. Excuse me. I've seen some pretty heavy injuries. We've transported wrestlers to the hospital. but it's a great event. It's entertainment at its best.
Yeah, I love it, and honestly, I still watch it to this day every now and then with my kids. They'll get into it, we'll watch it, and like that just knowing that, I was just like, you know what? I love it, and it made me appreciate it more then because
It's like an art almost.
It is an art.
Mhm.
It was an art.
A very dear friend of mine who's now passed away, Dr. Joe Villietta, he was a principal at Wheeling Central, once said to me that WWE wrestling is a modern day Christian morality play. It's good versus evil.
Mhm.
And good almost always wins. And
Yeah.
that may have changed a little bit as we move into 2020 and later,
Yeah.
but that's been a case. I mean, it's again, I don't know how many WWE shows we've hosted. I'm sure that during my tenure here, it's probably 70 or 80.
Yeah.
There was a time we were doing 4 shows a year, and there was one year that we had Hulk Hogan that year more times than any building in the country.
Wow.
Including Staples Arena or Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
So it's just the way the cards worked. It was really good. Again, those are things I'll look back and remember. I've met Mr. McMahon, your cousin Jennifer, and Barb. Your Aunt Barb and I sat in Vince's office in
Connecticut, right?
In Connecticut.
Really?
And we visited their studios many years ago. We were just passing through. And my friend Ed wanted us to stop. And I was utterly amazed because, I'd also been to the CNN studios on tours. The WWE studios were more sophisticated in that day than CNN, believe it or not.
I believe it.
love that.
I
So-
believe it.
So you mentioned 2020. Were you worried at all when everything started shutting down? You acquired the capital not long before that, but you had the capital and the West Banco. So you're directing 2 arena and a theater at the time.
Yeah, we actually acquired the theater, and it had been closed for a couple of years in 2009. But in 2020, when I guess that was probably the low point of the entertainment industry and maybe my career, because the world crashed. Let's just be honest, not just in the entertainment business, but in the airlines and medical care industries basically shut down, and it was a crash. And when you wake up and say, here's the thing, we're a tremendous family here. That's something we're proud of.
Yeah.
And a lot of our employees had kids and families, and now all of a sudden we have no events, no income whatsoever.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that was a tough time because we closed in March suddenly of 2020.
Yeah.
And then in our case, we didn't get to do anything again until we were lucky in that we started back up in December of 2020. The East Coast Hockey League, which the Nailers are a member,
Yep.
Mhm.
decided that they were going to help lead the way back to
Wow.
life. And so
That's great.
13 of the 26 teams in the East Coast Hockey League decided to play. And so, but we were closed totally for 9 months and suffered those effects for close to 2 years.
Yeah.
We were fortunate in that we were able to attain a PPP loan to bring our employees back to work. Our employees were laid off for 12 weeks.
Wow.
We got a PPP loan. And then Governor Justice helped out all the buildings in West Virginia with a little bit of a grant.
Nice.
And then we got a major SVOG grant, so we were lucky, but it was a tough time.
It
Yeah.
was. And speaking of the Nailers, this hat I've worn for 142 shows. It's kind of like my tribute to this building and to this place. And that's another one of the hockey teams that we're just talking about that plays here. So if you guys have ever wondered what the logo of this hat has been watching these shows, it's kind of sitting right here behind us. Joe Naylor sitting here too.
Now, the Wheeling Nailers now, again, that's a big part of my career. They've now been here for 31 years.
Jeez.
So
Yeah.
So impressive. So impressive.
Hi.
So a couple of questions I want to bring up, mainly because I know my last name's Shriver, but I feel like I have a lot of Magruder in me.
you better.
Yes. And something that I get from you guys, I feel, is dedication. Now, has there ever been a time over the last 36 years where that dedication just kind of want to make you walk away, but it brought you back in? Because when I get dedicated to something, I see through it. But has there ever been a time when you just want to say, I'm done now?
I can't say I've ever wanted to walk away. And I mentioned to you earlier, I cannot remember a morning when I woke up trying to find an excuse not to go to work. And I guess maybe that's a blessing. That's a blessing I've had. And I think I inherited, Aaron. I think you're right. I think part of that's a family trait. I'm so proud of my kids because all three of my kids and now my grandkids are exceedingly hard workers. They're very dedicated. They're very focused. Sometimes it could be a curse,
To a fault, right?
but basically,
That's my next question.
it's a blessing, and it's something I'm sure you inherited. You've watched your mom and dad do the same thing. They know what's important in life.
Well, I've seen how dedicated my mom was, like to my grandfather and to her job and everything in her life, and that's why I've known that's been a Magruder trade, and that's why why 36 years here is impressive. 4 decades in this building, and that's why everybody always has those days where there's like, okay, I gotta go, but to have you say that I've never found an excuse or never looked for an excuse not to come to work, it means and speaks volumes.
You truly did.
Now, having said that, I need to be dead honest with you. I work with the most marvelous people in the world. I've got some folks here that Sonia Fedorko, Doug Campbell, both been with me more than 25 years. They're like brother and sister, so that makes it different too. Now, having said that, I got a lot of other people that work here that I dearly love. I've worked with the best people in the world. And even though this is Wes Banco Arena in Wheeling, West Virginia, and we know we're not Staples Arena and we're not Madison Square Garden, I'll put our team up against any in the country. In terms of their job performance, in terms of building conversions, because here in the arena, you've been around here, we play hockey one night. Tomorrow we might have a concert where we have 8,000-9,000 people. The next day we might play hockey again. Maybe the next night we've got a WVU or a high school basketball game. So conversions are a big thing, and I'm just so proud of the people, both the ones that still work here now and those that have moved on or passed on. I've had a number of those. They're part of my life and they're part of my family, and so I guess that's the reason I've never wanted to walk away.
So another thing I feel like I get from the Magruders is I stay busy all the time. Like I have to always be working on something. If I'm not working, if I slow down, I kind of get, I don't know, I get weird if I slow down. Are you afraid to slow down now that you're kind of calling it a day?
That's a great question, Aaron. I don't think I'm afraid to slow down. I think, and I've had tons of friends over the years who always said to me, you'll know when it's time to retire. And I never truly knew what that meant until the last 6-7 months. And then you start to think, and then you start to pray a little bit and ask that, hey, can I get some signs? And it's time. So I'm ready to slow down. I hope I can do that well.
Yeah.
I'm ready to slow down, but I'm not going to quit.
Yeah.
That I promise you.
Yeah.
One of the first things, I'm going to be at the Wellness Center, trying to get in a little better shape. The Wellness Center is good for 2 things, physical and social, mental health. Yeah. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do something else. I don't know what it's going to be. I haven't sorted that out yet. I need to step away from here next week. Barb and I and my wife we're going to do a couple-week trip, just rambling in the country, meeting up with some friends around the country, having dinner, and thinking a lot. Thinking about what's the next chapter. It's not going home and sit on the couch.
Yeah. That's amazing.
You still got a lot of life left to live. So
Absolutely.
The next couple of questions I want to ask is just kind of mainly about the last 36 years. Who has been the most interesting person you've ever met while working here at the Wes Banco Arena? I know you talked a little bit about Vince McMahon and some of the other wrestlers and different artists and everything, but all that, who's been like someone just kind of blew your mind when you got to talk to them?
I got to tell you, it's difficult to pick out the most interesting. Now, I guess the most significant character that I was blown away about was not here. We were actually on a trip one time to New England, walked into a little country post office in a town of maybe 50 people, and ran into an old man by the name of John Coolidge. John Coolidge was President Calvin Coolidge's son.
Oh, wow.
And he had grown up as a youngster in the White House. And so Mr. Coolidge took the time to talk to Barb and I for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And I got to be honest with you, you think about vibes and feeling, that was amazing. But here, there's been so many great people. And contrary to what folks think, all the people that have touched me and I guess impressed me the most didn't come in the back door. Mm-hmm. Some of them come in the front door. And so they're patrons and fans and people that we've gotten to know. There's a number of those folks that always stop to say hello. I remember one night, and I don't know the lady's name, and I'll refer to her as a little old lady, but right here, right in this lobby, I was standing out here one night after a professional skate show, and she said to me, she was shuffling by, and I thought, oh no, this lady's slowing down. She looked at me and goes, "Hey, you're Mr. Magruder, aren't you?" She was probably in her 80s. And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." And I was prepared to say something was wrong. But she said, "Can I just say thank you? I want to thank you," she says, "because I've always watched Dorothy Hamill on TV. I never thought I'd get to see her. And tonight I got to see Dorothy Hamill skate."
That's cool.
I can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah.
No.
You cannot put a price tag on that.
No.
To know that, to feel that. So those are some of the great people, to get to say hello to Elton John. Now, Elton John, just a phenomenal guy. He performed here for more than 2 hours. Every song was a hit.
Yeah.
Just to get to say hello to that kind of guy. But just so many fascinating people, Aaron. And I never made it a point. I didn't try to meet people. That's not who I am. You've been here during events. Our staff has a code of conduct.
Yeah.
We don't bother artists or entertainers for autographs, or we don't try to, "Hey, how you doing, brother?" And the director needs to set that example. I will tell you that, the presidents, a number of presidents have been here. President Bush was here, and his chief of staff come and said to me, "It's time for you. Come on back and meet President Bush." And I respectfully declined because I was amongst 5 or 6 employees. And the rule here is you can't do that. So the rule applies to me too. I was working that day.
Yeah.
So the rule applies. So those are people that you say, "Oh, wow, there's been some great characters here." President Trump was here 3 times. 2 of the 3 days President Trump was here, I'll tell you something about my staff. I wasn't here. I was away either on business or vacation, and they handled President Trump. So
Pretty impressive.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
Again, I am blessed with one of the very, very best teams in all of this industry.
So over the years, what has been your most proud moment at the arena? And have you had any regrets at all? Like maybe a sellout that you didn't think was going to sell out? What's made you really proud?
One of the proudest moments I got to tell you that I guess I look back on is that many, many years ago, before I worked here, I worked for the Marshall County Board of Education as their comptroller business manager. I had occasion to work with the West Virginia Department of Highways, and I met a young man by the name of Doug Paisley. Doug Paisley is Brad's dad. I met Doug quite honestly, before Brad was born. So I just feel a connection to the Paisley family. So when Brad became the great star that he is, his dad called one day and said, "Hey, look," and I still talk to Doug occasionally. We're friends. We have lunch together once in a while. Doug and I do. But to see Brad return here, when Brad made his very first return, and now I don't know the date right now, it's been a number of years ago, but I just remember when he walked in here to a sold out crowd. And here's the interesting thing. It was a sold out crowd where the Paisley Foundation was the promoter, not a touring agent, but the Paisley Foundation. Every dollar from that show went into the Brad Paisley Foundation, for which he helps people in need, flood victims.
Wasn't that when he did Mudstock? They called it like Mudstock.
Yes.
Yes. I remember that.
And Brad did that kind of show here. But that night, when he walked back out on the stage for the very first time in this building, I guess that was a moment that was just striking. And he walked out, and you could see his eyes as he looked at the audience, and he was home. And that was one. The other night that I remember very distinctly, and you're going to say, well, these are odd nights. These are not nights when there was an Elvis Presley type character here. But we had a football team here called at that time the Ohio Valley Greyhounds, an indoor football team. And the owner of that team was a very, very dear friend by the name of George Kellis, a media guy. George was a media guy that had his own radio station. He had been a TV personality. He had done a number of things, but more than anything, he was a very, very dear friend. And I'll never forget, we played for the indoor national championship against a team from Salt Lake City, Utah, and it was broadcast on ESPN, maybe 2. But that night we had a sellout crowd. We had one of the largest standing room crowds we ever had. We had another 1,200 people. It was dangerously on the edge of overcrowded, but we had another 1,200 people that bought standing room tickets. The kickoff was at 7:30 because of knowing the crowd and everything. We opened doors at 6. And by 6:30, the decibel level here just became outrageous because they were already cheering. It continued until 10:15 that night. and the Ohio Valley Greyhounds won the national championship. Actually, the game went down to the last play. We were leading by 2 points, so the other team had a chance in the very last drive if they could have got into range and kicked the field goal. But I just remember the electricity from 6 o'clock, 6:30 until 10:30. And then in the weeks to follow, I had people here in Wheeling Island across the river say, "Oh my God, what was going on over there last Saturday night?" But I just remember George was such a dear friend. It was so exciting. My dream is, and I guess maybe that's one of the regret things, is that the Wheeling Nailers, a team that I dearly love too, a hockey team, I haven't been able to witness that total championship yet. During my years here, they've won some division and conference championships, but we haven't won the big one. So
That's the Kelly Cup.
I'm hoping that even after I leave here, they would welcome me back to watch a game when we're playing for the national title.
Yeah.
So,
That would be
I just saw you guys brought back Louis Dumont, and I have a memory with that. I remember I was probably 11, 12 years old back when Louis Dumont played here for the Nailers early on. I got to skate with him. He gave me one of his sticks. I still have it at the house.
as you know, Louis was a young professional and a gentleman.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. We've seen so many great young people come here, many of them who never heard of Wheeling, West Virginia.
No.
And today, their hockey careers ended. They didn't get to the NHL, but they went to the next step in life. They got married. They have kids. There's a number of people around Wheeling that found this place and fell in love with it. And this is where they live now. And I think that's the ultimate testimony of this community.
Absolutely.
Well, and didn't we hear the Nailers have put the most players in the NHL too? I think
They have put more. They are the leading AA team in America. They put more players in the NHL than any other AA team in the history of hockey in America.
That's
We're
cool.
proud of that.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So before we wrap up and we move on to our sponsored section of the night, 36 years of memorabilia you've been collecting. What's your favorite piece? Do you have a favorite piece that you've had over the years?
I can't tell you I do. Again, that's never been extremely important to me.
No.
I've collected it. You've been out of my office. There's a wall full of stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do with all of it as I depart. They all have little special meanings.
Yeah.
I guess if I look at a piece, it's something that means more to me than anything. It's something that I was lucky enough to get about a year and a half ago. I got the Charles McElravy Award from the industry,
Absolutely.
and for me, it's a singular award that they give once a year to one person in the International Association, and I don't know how it found its way to me, but I would just tell you that coming from your peers and my peers come from all across not only America but Canada, Mexico, and the world. Because of this business, I've had the chance to do seminars and teach in Australia. It's just been a life-changing experience and a wonderful one. And I've had a great ride here. Let's just put it that way. A truly great ride.
Oh, and I gotta thank you for everything. Like I said, you're the reason I do this. That Kiss show in 1997, walking through these doors, it changed me. It just changed my musical taste. Like it put something in me, and I've always chased that since that day. And I really do appreciate it.
Well, you flatter me to think that I've had something.
I think I knew who you were on the first night we met. Like it was like, "Hi, I'm Erin. Let me tell you about my uncle."
Well, I gotta show you
That's
this.
how impressionable you were.
We were going through some old boxes, and this has to be from 92, 93. It's back from the Thunderbirds. So the cover, I don't know if you guys could see this on the camera. It was probably when I was in computer club in middle school, and it says the Civic Center and My Uncle Denny by Aaron Schreiber. And
No kidding.
And it's a short report. It's a very short report. So it does say, it says, "This is a short report on my uncle in the Civic Center. First, I would like to talk about my Uncle Denny. He lives in Wheeling, West Virginia. He manages the Wheeling Civic Center. It's almost the same as the Rosemont Horizon. My Aunt Barb said that my uncle is 46 going on 16. His wife Barb is real nice too. She works at Ticketmaster for Wheeling. Second, I will talk about the Wheeling Civic Center. It seats about 5,600 for hockey games and about 9,000 for concerts. My uncle bought a really neat hockey team there named the Thunderbirds. The Civic Center is famous in West Virginia. So now I told you about a really neat uncle and an awesome stadium."
Well, thank you. That is extremely flattering. Thank you.
But that was from probably 92, 93, 94 years old when I was in computer class. It dates back.
You did a good job. I tell you, I love the artwork you did.
I don't know who's on the
Those
cover.
classic clip art.
But it's just something I've always had. So I really appreciate this. So we'll move on to our Powered by Pod Deck section. Earlier tonight, we pulled a couple cards. The first one is if you can vacation for a week in any historical time period. So go back to any historical time period. Where would it be? What period would you go back to vacation in?
Probably the pre-revolutionary, early America, when the settlers first came here. I've always been interested in that. We love to visit, and often I can't tell you how many times just to escape for a day or two. Barb and I have gone to Williamsburg, and we've been to Williamsburg in the winter when it's virtually at its most closed time. It never closes entirely, but many of the things shut down. And I can't tell you, Aaron, there's probably been a half a dozen nights at 10 o'clock at night, 10 degrees and maybe snowing outside. The two of us would just stroll through Williamsburg and be the only sounds and listen and think and wonder how it was like to be our forefathers in that day. Mm-hmm. So I've always been intrigued by that, to be honest with you.
That was like me. I always talk about, so I dated the Shriver family back, and we had a different last name spelling, and they changed it to Philadelphia Port. So I've always wanted to go back to the Philadelphia Port and just stand there and be like, this is where our name was actually spelled different.
Just take a couple minutes, close your eyes, and let the mind wander.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes all you have to do. So when I was pulling cards, I pulled this one up, and we kind of touched base on this with the Marilyn Manson stuff. But during your career, how did you handle criticism?
Well, I'm not sure I always handled it well. One thing I learned early on, your mouth can get you into a lot of trouble.
Yep.
I've been on the hot seat a few times because I said things that I shouldn't have said. They weren't necessarily wrong. They just shouldn't have been said in the manner they were said or how they were said. So, I'm probably not the greatest handler of criticism, but you have to learn with this job, with any job where you're in the public and you're dealing with folks. People are entitled to have different opinions than you do. And you got to listen to that. And I think, if anything, that's a lesson maybe I've most learned in 36 and a half years, is how to listen just a little more and how to be respectful of those people who disagree with me. Sometimes it's been difficult for my family because sometimes it gets personal. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's been more difficult for them than me because you kind of get hardened to it. But I got to tell you something, Aaron. I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world. I've had far, far, far more supporters. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I deserve that, but I've had that, than I've had criticizers.
Would they push you to go for mayor wheeling at one point?
No, trust me, they don't want me to be the man.
All right, so since we're called Melodies and Memories, we have a segment where we play 5 or 6 seconds of a song. And the first memory you have with that song, we'll talk about it. Let me go ahead and pull this up. Go ahead and play the yellow one first.
Jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight.
It takes me back to my early teenage years. And here's the irony. This is tremendous irony. One of the, since we've taken over the Capitol Theater, one of my dreams was always, because my genre was doo-wop, was to see doo-wop music. And I met a wonderful guy 12 years ago who's into that. A now very, very dear friend, Charlie Pappas.
Yeah.
Charlie produces some doo-wop shows. And 3 weeks from tomorrow, that very song by that very same artist will be sung on the stage live at the Capitol Theater.
Oh,
how cool.
The doo-wop show coming up.
That's awesome.
We have Jay and the Americans, and we have the Tokens.
Yeah.
Jay Siegel's Tokens, who recorded that song. So that's a fabulous memory.
I
Very
love
cool.
that. All right, go ahead and do the green one. Everly Brothers, Dream.
Everly Brothers, again, back to the teenage days when you're dreaming about, hey, everything that can possibly happen. In those days, I was dreaming about being a baseball player, and I used to listen to that. But the Everlys are probably two of the best musicians. They've got that blend that I've ever listened to. And so I guess one of my regrets, I will never get to do that now, but I've never listened to the Everly Brothers live. But yeah, they're a great group. Again, take me back to my teenage days, delivering newspapers and playing baseball.
Those 45s that my mom used to say you got.
Yeah.
All right, do the yellow one. We had to throw this one in. This is a guaranteed one.
Oh, wow.
Country Roads. When you hear
Country Road, a dynamite song. And, let's be honest, that's the anthem of West Virginia.
Yeah.
We all adore that song. But again, one of the great nights in this building was John Denver. And John Denver did an acoustic show on a center stage, a center revolving stage, with a piano and 5 guitars. And it was one of the most phenomenal shows. Now, unfortunately, that night, there were probably less than 4,000 people. That's a good crowd. 4,000 is a decent crowd, don't get me wrong. But it wasn't sold out. But in thinking back, it's one of the 3 greatest concerts I've watched in my life.
That is
I bet that was
awesome.
incredible.
Yeah. Oh,
Stripped
man.
down,
I would-
acoustic.
So
yeah.
John Denver was incredible.
Yeah, I
And
bet
then
that
the
was awesome.
green one for the last one. I studied.
You did your homework.
I studied. Lost that love and feeling. When you hear
That's
that.
the first song Aunt Barb and I ever danced to. And now we're 55 years of marriage. So that's pretty
That's
inspirational.
incredible.
We have, and we've seen, luckily, we've seen the Righteous Brothers several times.
Nice.
Phenomenal. We've, since Bobby died, we've actually seen Bill Medley several times with his tribute show. But that's a very special song. And even when your Uncle Rob, or when your cousin Rob got married, right here, the reception was here, the band played You've Lost That Love and Feeling. And it's ironic, though, that Uncle Rob and Aunt Tammy's, or cousin Rob and cousin Tammy's, for you, their anniversary date's the same day as Barb and I. It's December 9.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's awesome.
Theirs was several years after ours. But,
Sure,
but
sure.
both were on December 9. But that's been a
Love
very,
that.
very special song for Barb and I both. Very first song we ever danced to.
Yeah, we had to ask Aunt Barbara for a song, so
Love it.
that one came up. So we have to do this with all of our guests. You said you've been on the hot seat a couple of times, so we're gonna put you on the hot seat one more time. I got 10 quick questions. First thing that comes to your mind: the first vinyl record that you think you've ever purchased. Do you remember the first?
The first vinyl record. Yeah, probably Secondhand Love by Connie Francis.
All right. If you had an endless supply of something, what would you want?
An endless supply. Probably chocolate eclairs.
Yes, I love that. So this is going to be a little controversial, but who has the best pizza?
The best pizza that I can get on a daily basis.
You
is
travel a lot, so you've been around.
a company by the name, a pizza shop by the name of Fiore's, up in just out of Pittsburgh. Fiore's Pizza. Right now, it's my favorite, but I love wood-fired pizzas, and there's just wood-fired.
Nice.
Nice.
I still gotta go to the Carlos for the for the win.
The Carlos is good.
Yeah.
So what's the furthest you've ever traveled by car?
The furthest I've ever traveled by car, distance-wise, probably Portland, Oregon. We drove to Portland. One trip-wise, I had the vacation of a lifetime last September when Barb and I did Route 66. We started in, we actually drove to your hometown of Chicago, and the very next morning started a 7,800-mile journey doing all of Route 66 and then wandering back across the Southwest and through Texas and back home. So
I bet that was beautiful.
I love driving.
Oh, I love that. The worst day job you've ever had.
The worst?
The worst day job you've ever had.
The worst day job. Let me think of that. That's tough because I'll be honest with you.
You've always loved all your jobs, huh?
I honestly have. Each one's been progressive and been wonderful. And the people, I can't think of a worst day job. And I mean that. I'm not just making that up. I can't think of that.
I love that. That's a good one. What's one thing people buy that you think is a waste of money?
Oh, hell, there's a lot of things they buy. It's a waste of money. But this is the biggest one. Bottled water.
Yeah.
What's a chore that you dislike doing? A chore you dislike doing?
A tour?
A chore.
Sure.
A chore.
Yeah. Like a house chore or
Oh,
something.
if I see it as a chore, I don't like it to begin with. But I guess what's crazy, you're gonna laugh at me. I like to cut grass.
Mhm.
I don't have a very big yard, so I can really like that. So I do enjoy cutting grass.
What's your favorite microwavable food?
Probably kettle popcorn.
Yeah,
kettle corn pop.
That was our guess. We were
Yeah.
guessing. We're like, he's gonna go popcorn. If you could leave 3 things in a time capsule right now for somebody 50 years from now, what would those 3 items be?
What are the 3 things?
That's a good one.
That is a really good one because I don't know what the way the world changes now. I don't know what I want to leave. I guess obviously probably a copy of today's newspaper. I don't know what it'll say, but it would stop the world in time at that day.
Mhm.
maybe a picture with my grandkids. What else would there be?
Got to throw maybe a Nailers hat in there.
In all honesty, the Wheeling Nailers have been a serious part of my life. That probably would be a good idea. A Wheeling Nailers, or maybe my Roberto Clemente autographed baseball.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. That was a good one. People might be digging that up a lot sooner than 50 years.
That's the problem. Yeah.
What's something you've got to do a lot of cool things, got to see a lot of cool things, travel everywhere, got to meet a lot of cool people. What's something that's still on your bucket list? Something that you still want to do?
I still got a few things on my bucket list. Aaron, I've never been to Europe. Maybe I'm too old. I'm probably not too old, but I still want to get to Europe on my terms. I don't know. It's not something I got planned here in the immediate future, but I certainly want to do that. I want to drive across America again. I want to do a lot of road trips. I want to go watch my grandkids. I want to continue to watch them play sports. I've gotten to do that. And when you talk about escapes, when you have those tough days, when you have those days that make you stop and think, when you go watch a volleyball game and see your granddaughter, or you go watch a football game, and they play so many different things. They're into baseball, softball, cheering, volleyball, soccer.
You're not going to slow down too much.
But it does. Right now, my grandson Luke plays. He's a freshman starting on the Central soccer team. My granddaughter Olivia plays volleyball for Wheeling Central. They got a great team. Maybe they'll win the state. Who knows? They're playing high school sports, and I got my other three. Jennifer's three are all playing multiple sports. I just enjoy that stuff.
Yeah.
I do, and not because they're necessarily the greatest players. They're not the greatest players on the athletic field. They're pretty good. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm proud of that. But what I love, I think they're all pretty compassionate. They're all team players, and that makes me the proudest.
I love that.
That's amazing. Absolutely.
And now you get to spend more time
doing that.
I love that.
Well, my grandson thinks that he and I are going to be bicycling down here in the waterfront. So, you know what?
They're going to keep you busy.
Come back next year at this time, and that you might see me bicycling down the waterfront.
There you go.
Well, we want to thank you so much for taking an hour. I know you are still working to the last very minute of your retirement.
I hope so.
But thank you for taking an hour out of today and sitting down with us, because I didn't even know it was an hour. It went by so quick.
Yeah.
But we really appreciate being able to sit down and talk to you today and just learn a little bit about your career here.
Well, Aaron, I want to thank you and Jillian, because I've learned a lot about you guys and what you do today. So I appreciate that, and I'm proud of you too.
Appreciate that, because that means a lot to me. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us today for episode 142 with Denny Magruder. We want to wish him the very best in his retirement and thank him for the memories that have been installed in me within these walls. The countless tours I've seen here, meeting Kenny Rogers while I was wearing a Pantera t-shirt, like I said, the Nasty Boys scaring my mom, playing hockey with Louis DeMont, and so much more. Thank you for everything you did to the city of Wheeling, the vibrant, and making it so vibrant over the last 4 decades. So don't forget to catch up on everything you guys missed tonight and past episodes over at melodiesandmemories.com. And we'll see you guys Monday night with a brand new show. Thank you guys for tuning in.
The Melodies and Memories podcast with Jillian and Aaron Schreiber, brought to you by Arlo Revolution. As we close the book on another chapter, remember, music gives us soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything. Next week, Jillian and Aaron connect more melodies and memories with the fans and artists they love. Thank you for being a part of this musical journey, and we will see you next time on the Melodies and Memories podcast with Jillian and Aaron Schreiber.
No, that was great.